What's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of the Pack a Day podcast here on YouTube. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Going to be talking some Packers tight ends today. And first of all, some good news. We heard from TMZ Sports, of all places, I guess, from Marcedes Lewis recently. And this is not something that I actually picked up on right away. I'm not sure if a lot of people know about it, but Marcedes Lewis apparently said that he has no plans to retire this upcoming season and wants to continue to play, and said, I would, quote, love to play with the Packers once again. So great news for Green Bay that Marcedes Lewis does not want to retire. Now, he's still an unrestricted free agent, and that would still be another contract that Green Bay is going to have to get worked out. But if you remember, about a month or so ago, I said when you look at the current free agent group, whether it's Corey Linsley, Aaron Jones, Kevin King, Jamal Williams, I actually think Marcedes Lewis might be the one that gets done first. And I'm not going to say that it's their biggest priority. Of course, you would rather have a Corey Linsley or an Aaron Jones over Marcedes Lewis, but it might be the biggest priority based on the actual hole in the lineup that Marcedes Lewis would create, and actually having the money to go, and re-sign him. Corey Linsley and Aaron Jones, those negotiations would be a little bit tougher in a higher price range. But Marcedes Lewis, you basically set the bar. He's had basically the same contract over the course of the last couple seasons. So you know what he's going to want. You know what that number is. And they just don't have a replacement for him in Green Bay right now. And I know what some of you may be thinking, probably not many of you, but some of you may be thinking, well, what about Isaac Nauta? That's a name that's kind of popped up a little bit. I'm sure most of you don't even know that name, but I wanted to take a little bit of a closer look at him because he was an interesting candidate to maybe fill in that Marcedes Lewis role. If you're not familiar with Isaac Nauta, he actually was drafted in the 7th round by the Lions in 2019. Actually played both in 2019 and 2020 on the regular season roster these past couple seasons. Totaled about 101 total snaps in the last couple years. In 2019, he was basically used almost entirely as a fullback. In 2020, much more as a tight end. In fact, I think maybe he had one play in the backfield, one or two, but for the vast majority of the plays, he was actually lined up as a tight end. Towards the end of the year, I think it was either late November, early December, Detroit cut him free. Green Bay added him to the practice squad and then signed him to a futures deal once the season has been over. And if you're, again, not familiar with him, definitely more of a blocking tight end. He is not a burner. He is not somebody that has a ton of speed that's going to get open downfield. He is more known for his blocking. He's not going to be a run after the catch kind of guy, but he's got an interesting build. He's 6'3", 246 pounds. As I mentioned, it's his third year out of Georgia, or this upcoming year will be his third year out of Georgia. Spent 2 seasons with Detroit. And again, he's played 101 snaps. He's had a total of 3 catches for 16 yards. He's played certainly on special teams a lot more in 2019. They kind of cut back his special team snaps in 2020. So that's certainly going to be something that he has to work on. But I was intrigued. So I went back and I watched all 101 of these snaps this past year from Isaac Nauta, or the past 2 seasons from Isaac Nauta, and wanted to see, all right, what does he bring to the table? So as I mentioned, in 2019, they used him more as a fullback. Didn't go very well. Did not seem to fit him well in any way, shape, or form. Just kind of coming up, making blocks. He didn't make an impact. He basically just, was there, just in the way at best. He didn't have any athleticism out, or enough athleticism out of the backfield where he could catch a pass and turn up. He had one play that they tried to utilize him kind of on a spider 2-wide banana where he's out in the flat and he just dropped the pass. There was another play, I think it was this year actually, where they get it out to him in the flat on a 3rd and 4. He picks up 3 yards, just doesn't have that run after the catch ability. So he's going to have to really develop as a blocker. But I thought in 2020, when given an opportunity as a tight end, he looked much better as a blocking tight end and as more of a inline tight end that you could use in a variety of different ways. So he got a little bit of use as an H-back. You saw some of those plays where he's motioning in the backfield and blocking on the backside. He can do some of that. He executed some cut blocks, including against Chase Young. So he showed all the things that Matt LaFleur likes to do with his tight end position, with the Robert Tunyons, the Jay Sternbergers, the Dominique Daphnes. He can do that stuff, and he's a better blocker than Tunyon and Daphne and Sternberger and the likes of those players. And that's a good thing, right? However, he is nowhere near the blocker of a Marcedes Lewis. And you can say, well, who is, which is a fair assessment and a fair observation. But with Marcedes Lewis, you don't care if he brings anything to the table as a pass catcher because he is so good as a run blocker and as a pass protector. He is literally almost like an extra offensive tackle out there at times. He's in the 270s listed on Packers.com. It wouldn't surprise me if he was in the low 280s or at least high 270s. He's a physical, bulking presence. I've literally seen multiple plays on tape over the course of the last couple seasons where he's one-on-one with a edge defender and just blocking them. He's got to play against Khalil Mack. He had to play against Jason Pierre-Paul. Yeah, it was Jason Pierre-Paul in the NFC Championship game where he just brings him to the sidelines. Like, it is rare that you are seeing a tight end do those sort of things, but you don't care if he's necessarily bringing a ton to the passing game because he's so good at that aspect. Well, with Isaac Nauta, he's also not bringing a ton to the passing game. He's got a little bit more juice than Marcedes Lewis, but so do you, so do I, and so do most people. I'm being a little bit facetious there, but Isaac Nauta isn't going to be much better of a receiving option because he doesn't have that juice either, but he's not anywhere near the blocker that a Marcedes Lewis is. And if you're looking at Lewis as that 270, 280 guy, Isaac Nauta, again, is in that 240, 246, maybe he can get up to 250, but he's still 6'3". He's much shorter. He doesn't have the size and the bulk that a Marcedes Lewis does. So my point being here is he's a nice player. And he did some nice things on tape. He was much better in 2020 at tight end than he was at 2019 in fullback. He can do some of the motion stuff. He can get in the way. He can crack block. He can cut block. He can get out in space. Had a great play against a corner where he basically drove him to the sideline. So he's got a little bit of nasty in him at times. I think there's something to develop there. But if you're looking and saying, you know what, Marcedes Lewis is a free agent, we're going to let him walk, and maybe we'll give Isaac Nauta a chance to be that blocking tight end. He's just not there. He's not ready for that. So you might say, well, let's look at the rest of that tight end roster. Are any of them capable? Well, you've got Bronson Kafusi, who they signed. If you're not familiar with Bronson Kafusi, he is 270. He is a bigger guy. He played defensive end and defensive lineman through the majority of his career. But he's somebody like James Looney, the last couple seasons, who's trying to make a transition from defensive line to tight end. That is a tall task. And even if he's a bulking physical presence, the odds that he can come in and execute as a blocking tight end while making that transition are very, very slim. So you're not betting on Bronson Kafusi to kind of come in and do that. You look at Jay Sternberger. He is a receiving tight end. He's a classic, inline, basically big wide receiver. He's not been adequate as a blocker at all. So certainly that's not going to be the case. Dominique Daphne's 243 pounds, only 6'2", more of that H-back. And I like him. I like Daphne a lot, but certainly not a blocking tight end. Josiah DeGuara, 238, H-back, fullback, can do a little tight end, but certainly not going to be your true blocking tight end. Bobby Tunyon, they listed at 237. My guess is he's a little bit bigger than that, but still, he's your overall tight end, right? He can do a little bit as a blocker and as an inline blocker, but he's going to be more of a receiving tight end. He can do some of the stuff in motion, but you don't want him being your full-time blocking tight end. That's not a good fit for Bobby Tunyon, assuming he's back, which he's a restricted free agent. You would expect him to be. And then there's John Lovett, 234. Again, H-back, fullback. Can use a little bit as a tight end, but that's not going to be his forte, and certainly not as a blocking tight end either. So point being here is Green Bay doesn't have that true blocking tight end on their roster. And I think if you look at what Isaac Nauta brings to the table, I think ideally what you would like to do is say, bring him back one more year on the practice squad. I don't think anyone's signing him off your practice squad. I don't think anyone's claiming him off of waivers if you release him in cut down time. So probably a release around cut down time. You bring him back on waivers, or on your practice squad, once he clears waivers. Let him sit for an entire year. Bring back Marcedes Lewis in 2021 and go to Nauta and say, listen, you're at 240, low 250s right now. We want you closer to 260. We want you as an intimidating, bulking presence who can pick up defensive linemen and be a true inline blocking tight end. He's got some of the skill. He's got some of the technique. It's things that he's got to continue to work on. But if he can bulk up and get bigger and work on his technique and just basically say, hey, go watch Marcedes Lewis for a year. And if you can bulk up and be better and be an inline blocking tight end, next year we've got $1 million plus contract waiting for you, and we think you can be a real contributor for this team filling in that Marcedes Lewis role. So I think if you can get him back on the practice squad, I don't know that he can't do it in 2022. I just don't think he's ready for it yet quite now in 2021. So I think he's got to figure out that ideal height weight for him. He's not going to be a receiving guy, so put on that functional strength. Get in the weight room, sit behind hopefully Marcedes Lewis for this upcoming season, and then see what you can do in 2022. That's where I'm at with Isaac Nauta right now. But hopefully the good news is that Marcedes Lewis wants to be back in Green Bay. Rodgers loves him. The team loves him. Apparently, the team got Matt LaFleur a Marcedes Lewis jersey. I think it was for his birthday. It was either that or Christmas. I forget what it was. So LaFleur loves Marcedes Lewis, and they just don't make tight ends like this who can block the way that Lewis blocks. And even if his legs aren't the way they used to be, and even if he doesn't bring any to the table as a receiving tight end, that is totally fine. He can still be a threat in the red zone due to his height. He's got good hands. He's not going to give you anything after the catch, but he is here in Green Bay as a blocker, both in pass protection and in the running game, and has a tremendous amount of value in that regard. So I would expect that to get done because one, again, everyone seems to love Marcedes Lewis on the team. He's a true leader in the locker room. And then two, they just don't have anyone that can fill that spot on the roster. You look in free agency, that guy, that blocking tight end, there's nobody out there that's a free agent this upcoming year that could fill that spot. And, drafting a player, even if you get a true blocking tight end, it's tough to find one that's got the technique and everything down in their rookie season. And I'm not sure Green Bay wants to invest, in another tight end after DeGuara and Sternberger, probably paying Tunyon some money this year. I just don't see that happening. So bring back Marcedes. That's going to be my guess. It sounds like he wants to play, doesn't want to retire, wants to be a Packer. So Brian Gutekunst, let's make it happen and see how Lewis can do in 2021. That's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for joining me. Appreciate it as always. Make sure to check out Dusty, Steve, and Sarah on today's audio version of the podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.